So, welcome to the No Fear Blogging for the Job Search webinar. Tonight's webinar is sponsored by the Hiatt Career Center at Brandeis, as well as Career Moves, which is a division of JVS, and that is where our fabulous presenter is hailing from tonight. Allison Weiss is a social media specialist at Career Moves. She works with both job seekers and career advancers to help them with their personal branding, digital networking, and generating online leads. So I'm Alexandra. I am the Associate Director of Alumni Career Programs and Engagement at the Hiatt Career Center. And on behalf of Hiatt and the Brandeis University Alumni Association, I want to welcome all of you here tonight. It's going to be a great webinar. And without further ado, Allison.
Thank you so much, Alexandra, for the warm introduction and also for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm really excited to be able to talk to all of you guys about blogging for the job search. The topic I know is kind of an odd one. It's who would think to blog for a job search in this age where there are resumes and there are social resumes and there's LinkedIn, why blog for the job search? And it was fun for me to put together this workshop because I stumbled upon a blog on LinkedIn that talked all about how a recent Tufts grad who graduated with me in 2012, but I didn't know, Lindsey Kirchoff, and I'll be talking about her more throughout this presentation, had successfully used a blogging and social networking campaign to get a competitive job at HubSpot, which is a social media networking company. And she'd gotten it straight out of undergrad, which is almost unheard of. So I got really inspired to put together this workshop just out of this really great story that I had heard that I'll be telling you more about. So I'm really grateful to have been invited by Hiatt, so thank you so much for hosting me. So the first thing I want to talk about is the company that I'm coming from. Career Moves is a nonprofit career services center. We're actually very similar to Hiatt in a lot of ways, except that we are a nonprofit in the downtown Boston area, and we serve anyone in seeking a professional level job. So we help people figure out both what they want to do, and then we help people get there. So using job search strategies, working on their resume and interview skills, and putting together a LinkedIn strategy. And we would love to work with any of you if you're interested too. So you can have my contact information and contact me offline. So before we get started, I want to know a little bit about those of you who are on the webinar. We're going to have 2 polls that we're going to launch in a row just so I sort of know where you guys are coming from and I can tailor the content that I'm going to present to you. So the first poll we're going to launch is just asking, what is your current employment status? Can you launch that?
All right, so if you could just respond quickly to our poll, what your current employment status is. Are you attending grad school? Are you happily employed? Are you employed but looking to make a career change? Or are you not currently employed but embarking on a job search? We're just waiting on a couple more to vote. 3, 2, 1. And we're going to close the poll and show you the results.
Okay, great. This is so interesting to see. This is something we're seeing at Career Moves a lot more too, that we're seeing about half and half people who are looking for their first job or actively in a job search and currently unemployed, and people who are looking to make a career change from within their job. So it's interesting to see that that holds true for the Hiatt audience as well, because it's a trend we've been noticing as well. So now that I know that most of the people here are in some type of active job search, whether it's because you're unemployed or you're looking for a career change, that's really helpful for me to know. And I would love to know, what is your background with blogs already? Which best describes how you currently interact with blogs?
So if you could respond to the poll we just launched. You don't know yet. You're still learning about blogs. Or do you read them regularly? Or do you read and comment on them? Or do you even go so far as to post guest blog posts for a company or a friend's blog? Or do you have your own at this time? We'll give it 3 more seconds for votes. 2, 1. And we're going to share those results with you now.
Great. So these results are pretty consistent with what I've seen when I teach this workshop at Career Moves as well. I think that it's actually really important that the majority of you do already read blogs. I think of it in terms of literacy. So, you know, when you were learning to write, you had to know how to read first, and that was how you became a good writer. And I think similarly, you're going to be able to have some sense already of what makes for a good blog if you read them regularly. And about 43% of you already read them, and then a little over, let's see, a little over 30% of you write them in some way, shape, or form too. So that's great. Okay, so why blog for the job search? There are a couple of different reasons that you might want to blog for the job search. First of all, it demonstrates expertise. Lindsey Kirchoff, that person I was talking about at the beginning who used a blogging strategy to get into her job, she has this really great line where she says, don't wait for a job to give you permission to start building your skills. And she used her blog, which we'll talk about a little bit later, really to launch some of her skills. When she was an undergrad at Tufts, there was only one marketing class available to her, and she knew she wanted to go into marketing. So she used her blog to develop some very concrete technical and marketing skills, such as search engine optimization and guest blogs and content curation and social networking to get her blog out there. So that's one way that that's one reason you might want to blog for the job search, is to be able to demonstrate the expertise that you have and to build that expertise. It also shows instead of tells your value to your audience. And I think that's probably the most important reason to blog for the job search. Companies are always looking to find out why they should hire someone. They're always looking for little reasons to knock someone out of the running instead of really bringing someone in. But if you have this platform to show them, I'm valuable because I can write this type of content, or I'm valuable because I create really great videos that go along with content, or I'm valuable because I can take big, scary reports and make them into beautiful infographics. That's going to be something that catches an employer's attention or a hiring manager's attention right away, because they'll see that the bottom line that you can deliver for them. So I think that's the most important reason to blog for the job search, just because it gives you a free or low cost, depending on what option you choose, way to show instead of tell your value. It can also help you build connections, which we'll talk about a lot more later. And it helps you establish an identity outside of your current job title, especially for those of you, I think it was about 30% of you, who are looking to make a career change. So you really want to establish a professional identity outside of your current job title if you're looking to make a change. And it also helps you establish an identity outside of a job seeker. I think sometimes it's really difficult for us when we are in a job-seeking position, when we're unemployed or we're graduating from college or a graduate program. It can be difficult for us to communicate our value past that point. You say, oh, I'm looking for a job, and people just kind of tune out. But if you say, oh, I'm a millennial marketing expert and I blog at howtomarkettome.com, that's Lindsey's blog, it gives you an identity that's outside of what you want to have, as an identity of something that you're currently doing, and it shows your value, and it gives you just a way to walk a little taller, I think. Oh, and also for under helps build connections, a recent JobVite survey found that 94% of recruiters used social networking to hire last year, and they plan to use it even more in 2013. So that shows that there definitely are hiring managers and people in power who are on the internet in some way, shape, or form. Not all of them are using blogs. In fact, I think it was something like 60% of them exclusively use LinkedIn. And we'll get to this a little bit later too, but that's a great way to connect them on LinkedIn. Is, oh, hi, like I see that you're looking for someone to fill this position. I just happen to have written a blog post about how I can help in that position. But we'll get back to that a little bit later. So if you decide that blogging for the job search is something that you might want to do, how do you choose a blogging platform? I'm not going to get too into this right now because there's tons of information and infographics out there about the 3 major blogging platforms and their comparative advantages and disadvantages. I will just really quickly say that Blogger, WordPress, and Tumblr are the 3 most popular blogging platforms right now. Tumblr is really strong if your blog is going to be mostly image-based. So if you're a designer or you make videos, things like that, Tumblr is really great for that. Blogger is probably the most user-friendly for long-form content. It's just really easy to do. It's very much what you see is what you get, but you can't customize it as much. And WordPress has a little bit more of a learning curve, but it's much more customizable, and you have the option to expand it to look just like a normal website. So that's probably your best bet if you feel pretty comfortable with technology. Okay, so how do I blog for a job search? This is a large outline of what we're going to be talking about. Each of those 4 areas are things I'm going to go into in more depth, but I just wanted you to see them all in one place so you have some concept of what we're going to be talking about tonight. And so your first step is to identify a niche. Think about the small topic that will appeal to your small target audience. Then you want to create helpful content that's within that topic and appeals to that audience. And then you want to start to slowly build an audience. And it depends on what your goal is. Since most of you said that you're looking for a job, we'll continue to use that as an example. So if you're looking to blog for the job search, you might not necessarily need 1,000 views per post. You might just need 3 really strong views on that post. And then the 4th thing is to have a strategy to bring the first 3 all together. And so before I launch into this, we have another poll that I want to launch about how do you think you're going to use this blog that you're learning about?
Okay, so we just launched the poll. What do you hope blogging will help you do? Do you hope it'll help you secure a new job, find additional career opportunities like freelance work or consulting work? Are you looking to start your own business? Do you want to increase clients for an existing business? Or do you want it to help you network with industry thought leaders? Give you a couple more seconds to vote. 3, 2, 1. And we're going to close the poll and show you what you all said. So it looks like it's pretty spread out across the board. People are using blogs for securing a new job, finding additional career opportunities, starting a business, and networking.
Okay, great. It's so good to see that there's such a variety of interests, and I'm really glad that we asked that question because the first 2 polls we launched made it seem like everyone was in fairly similar positions, but actually you have a wide range of things that you're using this blog for, and that's really exciting to hear. Okay, so the first step in learning how to blog for the job search is to identify your niche audience. In Lindsey's blog, she interviewed the CEO of Holland Mark, which is a Boston-based marketing firm, and he said that the #1 mistake that marketing firms make and companies that are marketing products is that they think their target audience is everyone in the world. They think, oh, everyone drinks Coke, everyone wants to shop at Target. But really, the brands that are really successful are the ones that identify who their small niche audience is and market to them very well. And likewise, I think that successful bloggers do the same. You figure out who your target audience is, and then you market to them really well. So some of the ways that you might identify who your niche audience is by first identifying what type of person they are. Is it HR? Is it a potential hiring manager? Is it a potential client if you're looking to start your own business? Is it a gig manager? And by gig, I mean someone who might be able to give you freelance opportunities or speaking gigs, things like that. And then I think it's important to start thinking about both demographics and psychographics, which is actually a word I learned for this presentation when I first gave it. It means what do they think about and what do they care about? So what is your audience most passionate about? What keeps them up at night? Thinking about those types of things are going to be really important to formulating your blog. And we'll talk about how that then comes into your topic on the next slide a little bit more. But basically using both the demographic information that you have and the psychographic information that you sort of put together, you're going to figure out what your audience needs, and then you're going to figure out how to meet those needs. So before we go any further, do we have any questions about just identifying your niche audience?
Allison, we do have a question about how to build a larger audience, but I think you're going to get to that later on in the presentation.
Yes, I am. That's step number 3.
All right, so I think
Are there any other?
I think we're good to continue for right now.
Okay, great. So I really value interactive workshops. I think that when you're doing things, when you're writing things down, when you're given the chance to actually be creative during a workshop, I think you get more out of it. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to just type into the chat window a couple thoughts about what does your target audience need, how are you positioned to fill that need. And putting those two things together, that should help you kind of come up with your niche topic for your blog. So just take the next 30 seconds to chat a couple of ideas into the chat window. I would love to see some of the creative ideas you have. Okay, we have 5 more seconds. Okay, great.
Okay,
Alexandra, was there any trends that you saw?
Yeah, so I saw a couple great ones. This one's very specific, and so I'm going to mention this one. So this one's about teaching and education and coaching teachers on how they can interact with their students. Another person wants to help their audience find better ways to presenting themselves. Other folks are saying that their audience needs help with strategy development, and so they're uniquely positioned to offer them product management and help them develop roadmaps. So really a really nice array of ideas here.
That's so great, and it's exciting to hear that because I know there was a wide array of people who were looking either to find jobs or to start their own business, and it sounds like across the board everyone has some idea of what their skills are and some really good thoughts on how to communicate it in a really short amount of time. I don't know if that's something the people who typed those thoughts in felt like. I don't know if you felt like you were really putting together some strong language, but you were. And that's really great to see because I think sometimes people are afraid that they don't know how to market themselves. But sometimes exercises like this where you just have to come up with something in 30 seconds is actually some of your highest quality writing. It just gets to the truth really quickly. So I'm really glad that you guys did that with me. Thank you so much. And so we're going to go on to the second part of how to blog for the job search, which is creating helpful content. So 16% of all Google searches are unique. I don't know if that sounds like a big number to you, but to me that's staggering. That means that 16% of all searches that are put into Google are searches that have never been put into Google before. And I know that maybe sounds a little daunting, but it puts you in the unique position that if you can get into the heads of your target audience, both their demographics and their psychographics, enough, you're going to actually have a pretty good chance of getting high up ranked on Google because 16% of searches have never been searched before, and you're in the unique position to answer those searches. My biggest golden rule when it comes to creating content is the Dora philosophy. And I know it seems a little silly. Dora's, you know, a kid's cartoon. She's on Nickelodeon. But she's wildly popular for a reason. And I think that that reason is that Dora is a lens and she's a voice that helps you into a world. She explains her surroundings. She literally translates for you from Spanish to English. But the show's not really about her. What do we know about Dora? What is it? What are her innermost thoughts? What are her goals? We actually don't know that much about Dora, but she is our entry point into a bigger world of information. And likewise, a good, strong blog is an entry point and a voice to information. So maybe your strength is curating content that nobody else has seen, or maybe your strength is making content that's widely available, accessible. So information such as an annual report that anyone can download, but not everyone can sift through to get the good information, can be turned into an infographic. One of our most successful blogs at Career Moves when I just started here was one where we wrote about LinkedIn as a fake West Wing script. It was right during the presidential elections. And so there was a conversation between President Bartlett and his secretary. And he was like, oh no, we have to gather people who know information about this topic. How are we going to do it? And she's like, have you done a LinkedIn advanced search yet? And it was a little cheesy, but it worked. We got 100 views in one day, which is almost unheard of for our niche topic and our niche geographic area. So just thinking about ways that you can be helpful to the questions that people have and how you can utilize those 16% of unique searches is a really huge thing. Another really big thing is to think like a reporter. So whenever you're at an event or you're reading an article or you're listening to your friends talk, what is the story that they're talking about there? How can it become a blog? I call it blogging goggles. Like you have to kind of put your blogging goggles on and think about how your surroundings can turn into a story. And I think the goal you should set is to answer just one good question a week. A few more golden rules is to have a content calendar. And by this I mean you want to be able to post consistently. So maybe you're going to post on the first Monday of every month. Or maybe you're going to post 3 times a week. And then you also want this content calendar to help you stay on track for reaching your goals. So we use our blog partially as a way to get people into our workshops. And and the way that we do that is we have 2 blogs leading up to our workshops that are about the topic the workshop's about. And so it's almost like a little preview of the workshop, and then that bounces into a link to sign up for our workshop. And that's how we utilize our content calendar. I also think it's important to be able to mix buzzy articles. So articles are about current events or that use a fun format or something that's going to get a lot of views all at once, sort of like the West Wing article during the election season, and classic content that you can link back to in the future. You also want to keep your post to about 500 words and use lots of visuals. So on the bottom right, the GIF that you see there is from Mean Girls, and I'm asking how many visuals should you use, and the limit does not exist, and that's called a GIF. And then you also want to use infographics and checklists and slide shares, which is basically online PowerPoint, and videos and photos from events. Another golden rule that I didn't include on there is that you want to engage with your readers, both responding to content and sometimes responding to comments. And sometimes you also might want to have polls asking them what they want their next post to be, and that will get them to come back over and over again. Okay, so do you remember at the beginning I talked about Lindsey Kirchoff? She's my blogging guru, and she's my inspiration for this workshop. So I love this picture of her because, first of all, she has this very clearly defined mission statement, right? She says, I live for the aha moments when a message resonates just the right way with just the right people, which is such a great mission statement. I also think this is really great for those of you who might be a little squeamish about marketing yourself, thinking more in terms of what can you deliver for other people as opposed to having to market yourself. It's just kind of moving away from an elevator pitch mentality to a mission statement mentality. But when Lindsey graduated college and used her blogging strategy to get a job at HubSpot, the first article that she wrote about HubSpot was just an informational article. So I took a quote at the bottom from that article. She says, HubSpot has grown 6,015% in the last 3 years, earning itself the #2 ranking of Inc. magazine software companies and rakes in about $15 million in revenue. And the reason I wanted to share that sentence is not because it's the world's most brilliant sentence, but to show you that she had this really effective post that was actually very research-based. So sometimes people tell me that they don't think that they're creative writers. They don't think that blogging is for them. But she actually caught HubSpot's interest just by how much information she had gathered on them. So there are a ton of different ways to write creative, useful content. And for her, this content wasn't helpful to HubSpot in the sense that it helped them grow. It was helpful to them because it helped them see that she was good for them because she had done her homework and she knew what they needed for someone on their marketing team to be about. Some other ideas of blog post content that you could do is you could analyze company news. So if you have a couple of target companies that you really want to get into, set a Google alert for yourself on those company names and also any hiring managers within there. And then every time something new comes out, you can write a really thoughtful response to a new product rollout or new company restructuring or a new strategic partnership. But I think what the very strongest way you can use it when this is applicable to you is examples of your own expertise. So if you're applying to be an event planner, writing up what a detailed event plan and budget might look like if you worked for them and putting that as a blog, or a mock-up of a donation letter if you want to work for development, or a slide share of a staff training you might give if you're looking to be an organizer, or an audio or a video of a sales pitch if that's what you're looking to go into. So just sort of thinking about where your unique value lies for your target audience and how you can best convey that using this free blogging platform. You can also use it to interview industry thought leaders. It's a great excuse to meet people. It's a great excuse to ask questions that you might feel kind of silly asking on your own. It's, again, putting on those blog goggles and your reporter cap. Oh, I'm not asking this basic question for me. It's for the people. And that's what Lindsey did with the CEO of Holland Mark. And so that's a really great use of, and a really great way to meet people that you admire. Another way to use it is by writing ebooks. Have you ever seen those ebook links where it's like, oh, click here for a free ebook, but it's not really free. The cost is your email address. Well, if you could do something similar and capture contact information of the people who come to your blog, and then look those people up on LinkedIn to see if they're people you want to develop a deeper relationship with, because then you know that they've already demonstrated some interest in your content. Okay, so I'm going to take a minute here. I know that I kind of launched a lot of ideas at you, and this is just an introduction. There are entire classes on writing blog content, but I'm going to take a moment just to see if there are any questions on finding your niche audience or on developing helpful content.
Any questions from folks? We're just going to wait a couple more seconds. Okay, we have a question that came in. It's a great question. Allison, can you define what you mean by industry thought leaders?
That was a great question. I think it's a purposely nebulous term, actually. So I think it's just about whoever you admire and whoever you think can get you where you want to go. And so I think some industry thought leaders are honestly in entry-level positions. They've just gotten in, but they have so many great thoughts, like Lindsey. But then other industry thought leaders would be people who have been around for a really long time and are noticed in the field. So I recently had an informational interview with the co-founder of a feminist pop culture magazine called Bitch. And she is definitely an industry thought leader because she's one of the first people who made who did that blend of feminism and pop culture and made it into a sustainable business model. So I think the word industry thought leaders really means different things for different people, but I think that the best way to utilize that aspect of your blog is to meet the people that you think can get you where you want to go, whether that's a hiring manager or a potential client or a potential startup partner, just whatever makes the most sense to you.
Thanks, Allison. We have another question.
Other questions?
Yes. So what if a potential blogger has multiple interests? So should they focus their blog on one thing, or would it be okay to kind of intersperse their various interests and skills within the same blog?
Absolutely. So again, that depends. If you are using your blog mostly for personal use, then absolutely do whatever you want, have at it. If you're using your blog mostly to build specific blogging skills, then again, it can be really varied in your content because you're using this blog really mostly to learn how to design a blog and how to write search engine optimized content and how to keep a consistent schedule. But if you're writing this mostly to demonstrate your expertise in something fairly specific, like event planning or development, then you definitely want to keep to content that's related to that, although that can still be fairly broad. So it could be, you can write an article on some best practices in development in the Boston area based on galas you've attended. And so it could be like a write-up of galas one day, and another day it could be sort of a state of the nonprofit sector if you want to do development for nonprofits. So that's sort of the way in which you're still balancing multiple types of topics, and yet it all comes together to form that one goal in a way that speaks to your niche audience.
Okay, great. Thank you, Allison. So we have another question, though I think you'll get to it in a little bit, about how did Lindsey advertise her blog and how ultimately did HubSpot find her blog?
Oh, such a good story. And yep, we're going to get to that in 4 slides.
Okay, great. And so one last question. This is a good one, and it kind of talks about the relationship between different social media tools. So is posting on Facebook the same as blogging? Could it be considered the same as blogging?
Yes and no. It depends on what you're looking for, again, which I know I keep saying, and I'm sure it must be an unsatisfying response, but it's true. If you are looking just to put out a few paragraphs of content fairly regularly, and you already have a really vibrant Facebook community, then I don't see any reason to move that over to a blog. In fact, you'll probably lose readers if you move it over to a blog. And then I think Facebook can serve a similar function as a blog, just in terms of keeping your fans updated, letting people know what's going on, making people feel like they belong to community. It still has the commenting features, etc. But if you're using this more as a portfolio or a landing page, which landing pages are just the idea of having a home base that you refer people to. So you meet someone at an event and you're like, oh, I have this blog I'd love for you to check out. You go on an informational interview and they're talking about something. You're like, oh, that reminds me of a post I wrote. I'll send it to you. So if you're using it more as a landing page, or if you're using it more to show off multimedia skills, so you want to show some slide shares or some videos, then I think a blog is still stronger because it's static and it's easier to go back in time to post, especially if you've kept a couple of your posts classic, meaning that it's not tied to a specific moment in pop culture or current events.
That's a great answer, Allison. And just to add, from the career services perspective, really it's about building your online brand and building your online professional presence. And so there are so many tools out there that allow you to do that. LinkedIn, for example, Twitter, Facebook, and blogging. And so it's just a matter of which tool really works best for your goals, but they all contribute to that holistic professional brand that you build for yourself.
Absolutely. And also, I forgot to mention, you should definitely be putting your blogs out through your social media channels. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the section about building your audience. But that's another way in which your Facebook and your blog can be interrelated, is that you should be telling all of the people on your Facebook page about the blogs that you've written as you write them.
Okay, so we do have a couple more questions, but I do want to get through the presentation. So if we could just hold tight, we'll definitely get to them by the end.
Okay, great. So now I want to give you a little bit of time to brainstorm again. This is something that, again, I just think is really valuable. So take the next 30 seconds to write down, now that we've talked about how to define who your target audience is, and how your topic your helpful content needs to relate to that niche audience, what are 2 to 3 post topics that you think you could write right now with the skills that you have that would demonstrate your value to your target audience? So we'll give you about 30 seconds to write that into the chat window. Okay, just 5 more seconds to wrap up your thoughts and press enter so we can see your great ideas. Okay, great. Thank you guys so much for participating in this brainstorming exercise with me. Alexandra, are you seeing any ones that are really standing out?
I am, and it's kind of nice to see that professional development and career services kind of is intertwined into a lot of people's ideas. It just shows how top of mind it is these days. So one person said that they'd like to write an article exploring work happiness and growth. Which is really nice. Another one, which totally speaks to my design needs, is how to prepare your home or your office for fall. So really fun and just timely posts. And another person shared their current blog with us. So really nice, varied responses again. Thanks so much for sharing, you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm really glad that you pointed out those 2 examples, Alexandra, because it goes back to what I was talking about buzzy posts versus classic posts. So that example of how to prepare your home for fall, I bet it'll get a huge audience right off the bat, right? Everyone's thinking about fall right now. There's that amazing McSweeney's article about it being gourd season right now, and it's on the top of everyone's mind. So that post is a type of post that's likely to get 100 views in one day. But then a post like work happiness, that's something that's going to be a classic. So maybe it won't get 1 million views right away because they could take it or leave it right that second. It'll speak to different people at different times. But that's something you can post over and over and over again, and it'll keep getting consistent views. So I'm really glad we had those 2 examples because they're both really strong examples for different reasons. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so moving away from content creation, although you never really move away from content creation. The third step in how to blog for the job search is building an audience. And I think that this is the most daunting step. And I think that this is also the $1 million question. So the truth is that nobody really knows how to build a consistent audience. If we did, we wouldn't pay consultants to do it for us. But there are definitely some best practices that I can share. So how does my blog get read? One way is titles. And I know it sounds obvious, but actually a lot of successful blogs will use 50% of the time that they're writing an article to actually write the title, and then the other 50% to write the whole rest of the content. And think about your own blog reading use. Most of you said that you read blogs fairly regularly. How do you decide on your RSS feed or on Facebook, or if you use Twitter, how do you decide what you click on and what you don't? And I bet most of you do it just based on the title because we're so inundated with information. It's sort of all you kind of get. And I went to a blogging workshop that talked about magazine headlines, how they jump out at the page at you literally when you're in a grocery store line. But titles of blogs really do the same thing. And so thinking a lot about titles, both in terms of getting the audience, but also in terms of search engine optimization. And that's something we won't really get to have time to talk about today, and it's also not really my expertise. But search engine optimization relies largely on having keywords in posts. So back to that concept of 16% of all Google searches being unique, what are the words that those people are using when they're typing into Google? Making sure that you have some of the most common words in your title especially, because that's ranked even higher, but throughout your post as well and in your blog too, and tags and things like that. The next way your blog gets read is through social media relationship building. And so I think we talk all the time about how networking is just really important for the job search. Well, digital networking is really important for the blog readership as well. People really like to read content that's produced by people that they know, like, and trust. And I just read a statistic, I don't remember the exact number, but it was something along the lines of 70% of people will read an article if it's been shared by one of their friends. It's something huge like that. And so becoming one of their friends, their social media friends, but also just getting on the radar of some people who will then share it with people that they know, like, and trust. An email list is really only right for some people. There are definitely some people, I think millennials especially, we often see emailed blogs as sort of spammy, but email lists do really, really well with certain niches. And so kind of just have that option up there to subscribe via email and see if that works for you. The only way you'll know is kind of through trial and error. But there are some fairly popular blogs like Career Realism. I think they have something like 20,000 email subscribers. So it's definitely still something that people are looking to do. And also back to titles. One thing you can do to see if your titles are working is post the exact same content but with different titles, and do it on the same day of the week at the same time to make sure that that's not conflating, but on different weeks. And then see which blog gets the most views using the free analytic tools. And that's a really neat trick for figuring out if your titles are working or not. Another really great way to get views, and I guess this is really just a subset of social media relationship building, is guest blogging. So get people who are industry thought leaders in whatever way you define it to write on your blog, and then try to guest write on other people's blogs. So I just recently started writing a column for Idealist. I just got my second column just came out last week, which I'm really excited about. And ever since those columns have come out, every column that I link to from Career Moves has gotten substantial more views. I think each one gets at least 50 more views, which is a lot for just an embedded link in an article. So that's one way to get more views to your blog. And sometimes people won't like it if you put a direct link to your blog in a guest post. And so instead do that embedded link that I was talking about where it's like, oh, if you want more information about something that I sort of touched on, then you can go look at my blog post about it. And then also comment on other blogs. You don't have to have a link to your blog every time, but you should feel free to do that when it makes sense. So if someone is talking about, I'm thinking of the example you gave of preparing your home for fall. So what if someone had a really great article that was really strong and well received about preparing your home for summer? And then you could comment on it and say, oh, I really loved this article. It really inspired me to get my home summer ready. And it inspired me also to write this article about how to get your home fall ready. And I was thinking maybe some of the viewers of this piece might be interested in that and include a link. So that's one way to build viewers.
Allison, I have a question here that's related to this, kind of on the opposite end. So there's getting your blog read, but then there's also reading those other blogs that are out there. And so the question was really about how to find blogs that are quality and that are legitimate and credible. And particularly if you have any resources about finding niche blogs, this viewer is interested specifically in blogs about changing careers.
Oh, what a great topic. Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't feel like I have a good quick answer. I think it's largely through trial and error, but I also think that a lot of it is about finding one that's really great. So you find one blog about changing careers that has really spoken to you in the past, and a lot of people say that they're already reading some blogs, so a lot of you already have a baseline, and then look at the blogs that they cross-post on, look at the blogs that they comment on, and look at the blogs that people who read those blogs also read. So just kind of doing a little bit of following of the people that you know, like, and trust to see. I also think LinkedIn influencers are a really good way to get started if what you're looking for is career related. So that's on your homepage on LinkedIn. It's a series of blogs from people that LinkedIn specifically invites to write. And I'm pretty sure there's a couple of them that focus specifically on career change. LinkedIn has vetted all of these people, which may or may not mean that it speaks to you, but it means that these people had something that caught LinkedIn's attention, and that could be a good place to start too. But it's something that you're just going to develop slowly over time based on following certain trails.
Okay, thanks, Allison.
Yeah, no problem. And then the last way to get your blog read is just to give some free good press to a company or person. Everyone loves that feeling. When I go on my Twitter and I look at my mentions and people have tagged me in a post, they're like, oh, Allison just wrote this really great article on how to reach out without creeping out on social media. That was my last Idealist blog. Oh, it feels so good, and I just want to like this person and I want to know this person. And I think that's a really great way to start to build a relationship too. A lot of people don't know how to approach making a social media relationship. And I think a great way to start is just to help them spread their own word. So, you think something's quality, tweet about it or put it on Facebook and tag them, or even just write a really nice comment saying that you're going to email it out to some of your friends. And if you do that just a couple of times, they're going to start to recognize your name. And then if you want to make a harder ask, so something like an informational interview or a guest post, they're going to be a little bit more primed to do it because they sort of know you or virtually know you a little bit. Okay. So then, this is going back to a question that was asked a little bit earlier of how did Lindsey get her blog read by HubSpot? So this is a chart that she has on her website called Inbound Job Hunting. I don't know if people are familiar with the term inbound marketing, but the idea is that you should think of marketing as this giant funnel. And once you have someone in the top of your funnel, how do you keep them there forever? By asking harder and harder asks. So the way that HubSpot does it is they have a blog post about something, and then they have one of those free ebooks that requires your contact information about the same topic there. Then they ask you to join their e-list, and then they have a series of other steps that leads up to them eventually trying to sell your software. And so Lindsey adopted that model, and she used her blog as the first ask, and then she used various types of social and in-person networking to distribute that blog. And I told you, I read that quote from her, that her first blog was just informational. But then she wrote another blog that was about how she thinks of inbound marketing and how she could help HubSpot with their inbound marketing efforts. And then she distributed those out through a combination of social and in-person networking. And I think one of the things that's so powerful about this chart that she has is that through traditional job hunting, you only have one point of contact to the employer for the most part. You just send in a resume and you hope they read it. But through her inbound job hunting that uses the blog as her home base, you write a blog that shows instead of tells your value, and then you have all of these ways that you get it to the employer, supplemented by a traditional resume if that is applicable, if they have a current job opening. And all of a sudden you have an unignorable number of contacts to the employer. So even the busiest employer is going to know your name now. And so that's how Lindsey got her blog in the hands of HubSpot. And she even had this really cool Twitter campaign. It was a hashtag that was Hire Lindsey HubSpot. And I went through and I looked at it to see how she did it. And what's kind of amazing is that only 7 people use that hashtag. It's not really that many. I think most of us know 7 people who would do this for us if we asked. But that's enough to get someone's attention if no one else is doing it. I think a couple other really creative things I've seen is people taking out a LinkedIn ad for an internship and then putting their own name under the on Google AdWords for a hiring manager's name. So when they Googled themselves, they saw this applicant. So some really creative ways to get their content out there. And so I'm going to stop here for a second to see if there are any questions about building your audience. I'm sure there are a million, and I'm still asking a lot of questions too, but anything that I can answer right now.
Any questions on building your audience before we move on? All right, Allison, I think we can move on. And if anyone thinks of a question, you can feel free to send it in and we will respond at the next break.
Yeah, and actually 2 other things I was thinking of is depending on your niche. So we found, since we are a job search-based group, that LinkedIn groups are actually a really effective way for us to get our message out there. And so obviously that's not going to be as popular for the person who is making her home ready for fall. But since LinkedIn is all about finding a job, when we put our blogs on relevant LinkedIn groups, so job-seeking groups, Boston-specific group, career professional groups, that usually triples our views. So it's something, it's pretty small, it's pretty quick, but it makes a huge impact. Another thing, another best practice is when you have something relevant, which I don't think happens for most of us lay folk that often, but when you do, putting it on Wikipedia is really powerful too. I once snuck on to a Wikipedia page for Maggie Smith for about 2 seconds. It got taken down really fast, but I got 100 views out of that. I wrote an article that was called 3 Career Lessons We Can Learn from Maggie Smith, and that was huge. And I know that MIT actually had a really cool guest speaker who had his own Wikipedia page come, and when they put a link to that, in the reference tab of Wikipedia, that's been a steady view generator. They're still getting views on that post. So that's another best practice when it's relevant, when you have that type of content. But okay, so I really want everyone to have the time to brainstorm again. And I know that we're getting a little tight on time, but we definitely still have 30 seconds for everyone to write in the chat window a couple of ideas that you now have for getting your blog to your target audience. Okay, just 5 more seconds. Okay, great. Thanks so much. Alexandra, are there any standouts?
Okay, so got a couple of responses using keywords and very catchy images. So that makes a lot of sense. We have a sophisticated user here who's using Google AdWords. So that's always great to see. And so another person said that they've had a lot of great success by posting on Facebook, but now they're looking to expand their social media efforts with their next blog. So really nice.
Great, yeah. The people who said to use the keywords, that can also translate into hashtags on Twitter. So that's a good note to make too, that those keywords could become hashtags that people will find you on too. And the Google AdWords person, I am so impressed with you. I still think it's a difficult thing to navigate, but it has such a great return on investment. So I'm really excited to hear there are people using so many different strategies effectively. So our last section is just to have a strategy. And that really is just about bringing all of this together in a way that makes sense. And so the 4 things you want to do is define your goal, identify who can help you reach those goals, which is your niche audience, create content that helps your target audience, improves your mettle, get that content in the hands of your target audience, and then rinse and repeat over and over again. And so before I was talking about how Career Move's strategy is to get people in the door of our workshops. And we do that by writing 2 different posts that are about the workshop. Then sometimes we offer relevant downloads that captures people's contact information. And then once they're in the door, we actually give them little half sheets about our one-on-one services. So it's all about having this strategy that keeps people coming and keeps people in that funnel. And that's what our social media strategy looks like. So I want to do just one poll just before we all go to see which part of blogging for the job search do you feel most prepared to tackle now that we've covered these 4 elements?
So if you could go ahead and respond to our poll that we have up now. Are you at the point where you're ready to decide if blogging's right for you? Because it might not be, something else might be. Are you ready to identify a topic or a theme for your blog? Or maybe you're ready to see who that target audience should be. Or you just want to start writing. Or you're ready to go market it away. You already have a blog. So a couple of more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. We're going to close it and show you what you all said. So as you can see, we're pretty split across the board of where folks are ready to begin, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that there are people sort of on all sides. And so there's just one last thing that I want to share with you. This is sort of everything that we just talked about, but made into an infographic. So sort of practicing what I preach, although actually my work study student practiced what I preached. I didn't practice what I preached. She's an amazing designer. And so she made this for the careers and beers that we just had with Lindsey, the person I've been talking about all along. And she says the 4 steps are to start a blog, read and comment to build relationships, understand your industry, and then use LinkedIn and I would say other social networks as well to get it into the right hands of people to see it. And then figure out, part of a strategy too is figure out how to make it sustainable. And so one thing you might think about doing is have recurring features. So every Friday, Career Moves has something called the weekly roundup. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. We just go onto our analytics, look at the 4 most clicked on links on Twitter for that week, compile them into a roundup, and then have a moment of zen that, yes, we did steal from The Daily Show. That's just sort of a happy way to end your Friday. So it's usually cute pictures of puppies or an inspirational quote or a video or a fun event happening in Boston that weekend. And so that's our stand-in. That's something that's really easy to write, something we can do every Friday, something that if we have writer's block is something we can kind of fall back on. So I think that's part of having a strategy too, is thinking what is sustainable and what can I fall back on the days where I'm just not feeling that creative. So are there any questions now that I can answer about, let's start off just first asking about questions about having a strategy, and then we'll open it up to general questions.
So we do have a general question here,
okay.
Allison, if that's okay. So this viewer is asking that how are ways that they can expand their audience? So, for example, they may have readers of their blog that are reading it pretty heavily, but it's not actually their target.
Okay, so that again depends on your goal a little bit. If your target is something very small, so something along the lines of who Lindsey's target was, which was a couple of power people in HubSpot, then I think don't be afraid to reach out to them directly. So she sent LinkedIn messages to them, and it wasn't a message that just said like, oh hey, read my blog. It introduced herself to them. It told them how much she admires their company, and then it said for more information about how I feel I could add value to your company, check out the blog that I write that's been featured on this other blog. You know, she reached out to specific people on LinkedIn, and she often followed up on Twitter as well. But if your target is something broader than that, something where you can't just send out a few LinkedIn messages or include a couple of handles in a Twitter message, then that is, I think the biggest way is to guest blog on blogs that already have the audience that you want. And I think it's also about expanding into other social media channels, but in a sustainable way. So you don't want to start pinning things to Pinterest if you don't think you can sustain that, but you could pin every blog you wrote to Pinterest just using a striking visual from your post. And that would be a way to get a different type of audience, or using a different type of hashtag to get people's attention on Twitter. It's about thinking about where your audience already is. So if they're not on your blog, where are they? And how can you kind of make a natural funnel for them to come over to where you are? And I also think that one of the biggest secrets of social media is that people share content based on how sharing that content is going to make them look. And that's not separate from actually genuinely liking the content. That's very interrelated. But I might share an article about the government shutdown that's liberal to show that I'm a liberal and that's how I feel about this. Or I might share a funny cat video to show that I'm funny and I don't take myself too seriously and cats are awesome. So it's like getting inside the heads of why would someone share this? What would that mean about them and their brand, I guess. I don't really like that word that much, but that brand.
Okay, thank you. We have two other questions. It is 8 o'clock, so we'll try to keep this quick. Is there an ideal length for blog posts? So obviously not too short and not too long, but is there kind of an industry standard?
Yep. So again, it depends a little bit on what you're writing, but 500 is usually the golden word limit you're trying to get to.
Okay, great. And then we have one other question that's really interesting. So someone has a personal blog that they've had for a few years now. It's been about music and chess, two lovely topics near and dear to my heart. So is there a way to make this blog work to build a business brand as well? So is there a way to transition a personal blog into being a business branding tool?
Absolutely, and I think that's a great place to start. I love the music and chess. I think the thing I'm immediately jumping to, and I would love to talk offline with this person, but I'm thinking immediately of like being a left and right brain thinker, right? So you go in, especially companies are looking for people who are both analytical and creative. I know that there's a advertising company just next door to us, M&R Communications, and they're always saying that that's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone with the left and the right brain. So I think that is a great way to brand yourself for that. Or it could be a great way to brand yourself in like an education role, because those are the two topics that you have. I think there are a lot of possibilities for something like that. But broadly still, yes, it's about thinking about what your target audience is looking for and being helpful, which I know I said a million times, but I mean, what about music and chess is what your audience is looking for. So that ad agency is looking for someone who's analytical and creative, but someone else might be looking for something else entirely, and making sure that you are kind of angling what you're saying to specifically address why it's helpful to your target audience.
Okay, thanks so much, Allison. So we will still be online for a little bit longer after the broadcast to answer any other questions, but I think this one comment from one of our viewers is a great way to wrap up. It's actually a success story. This viewer used their personal blog about her adoption on her resume to help the employer gain perspective on who she was as a person, and it actually got her an interview and ultimately the job. So very exciting, and congratulations.
Congratulations. That's so great.
All right, back to you, Allison.
Okay, yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I've really appreciated the time to kind of talk with you about blogging for the job search, and I've really enjoyed hearing back from you too. So thank you guys so much for your participation in the polls and your participation in the brainstorming sessions. It's something that I love to do, is see what great things everyone else has in their minds, because I think that, you know, it's with all of these people with all of these different sets of experience, you're going to be able to teach each other so much more than I could ever teach you. So thank you so much for your active participation in that.
So in terms of next steps, Brandeis students and undergraduate alumni, I just wanted to let you know that as students and alumni, you have access to free career counseling through the Hiatt Career Center for life. And so you can just call our number here to schedule a free one-on-one advising appointment with a Hiatt career counselor. We also have another webinar coming up next month. This is a monthly career series, free for all students, alumni, and members of the Brandeis community. It's going to be on building your professional brand. So a lot of the things that we talked about today, the next webinar will build on. We'll talk more about LinkedIn. We'll talk more about Facebook and Twitter. Also, if you could please fill out our satisfaction survey that will come to you via email. And let us know how we did tonight. We'd love to serve you better, and we'd love to know your feedback. And also, we'll be sending a follow-up email later on, either tonight or tomorrow, which will have links to additional resources, as well as the link to the archived version of the webinar, as well as the slides.
And I also want to say that we are having a social media for nonprofits workshop next Tuesday at noon at our downtown office. And I'm sure I can send a link out through Alexandra, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
If that's something that you might be interested in, because there were a lot of questions about how does this relate to Facebook, how does this relate to Twitter, and that's something that we can answer a little bit more there too.
Okay, so this is Alexandra. Again, I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Career Programs and Engagement. So I manage all of the career programs that are going out to Brandeis alumni. So if you want to get in touch with me or with the Hiatt Career Center, please feel free. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and we also hope you'll join our Brandeis University Career Connections group on LinkedIn. So that's open to Brandeis students, alums of the graduate programs, grad students, everyone in the Brandeis community to network with one another. So I hope to see you on LinkedIn.
And if you want to contact me, I would love that too. I can help you figure out how to use LinkedIn, a little bit more about digital networking, and how to market yourself online. And so this is all of my contact information. I would love to chat with you more about this. It sounds like there's some great ideas out there.
So thank you all again for joining us tonight. Again, on behalf of the Hiatt Career Center, the Brandeis University Alumni Association, Career Moves. Thank you so much, Allison, for being a great presenter, and we will hope to see you again. Thank you all so much.